Hey everyone, Taxman here with another episode of the Six Sided Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, the Taxman, like I just said. And before I kick the show off, I just want to give a shout out to our new podcast streaming network, the Pulse Podcast Network. In association with this as well, to all you basketball fans, we got a special promo code for you to check out. So the Pulse Podcast Network is now providing its listeners with a 10% discount off all merchandise from Jersey Express. They sell NBA, college jerseys, plus player hoodies. Simply use the code PULSE at checkout. You can find them at Jersey Express _ on Twitter, or check out jerseyexpress.com. Once again, jerseyexpress.com. Use the promo code PULSE to get 10% off of your order. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. I have a couple of topics I wanted to discuss, and then obviously, as usual, I'll be opening the show up to questions, comments, queries in the chat room, if there are any. We'll see what happens. But obviously, the big ticket item that everybody's been talking about in the news today, or this week, I should say, has been the constant decline in WWE Raw viewership. Now, I know people are a little bit confused on how ratings work or how the Nielsen's are, and I'm going to get into that a little bit, as well as how it relates to, wrestling in the past and things of that nature. So, how bad did it get? Well, essentially, Raw in October was averaging about 1.9. That was October of last year. And this year fell to 1.74. Now, this past week, the week previous, I should say, it fell to 1.6. And then this last one was a 1.58. So essentially, that means you're talking about millions of people are in a household, or millions of households, right? And then you would multiply that by the average amount of people that live in a household. So essentially, 1.9 would equal, we'll say, about 2.5 million people watching. Once again, you're factoring in people that live in a household, so that's part of the issue as well. And I know a lot of people have been like, "Oh, the ratings." They're historically bad for Raw, but they're not the worst ever. Well, that's actually false. I know everybody likes to harken back to the dumpster days of WCW, we'll say, the 2001 era, and everybody was saying, "Oh, those ratings were the worst. They were the worst ever." Well, let's just go through those ratings real quick. So in 2000. They were roughly averaging 2.2 for rating scale, with a median of 2.4. So that would be throughout the course of the show. Sorry, the highest they would hit would be a 2.4, 2.6, a 2.9 in a few instances, and the lowest would be I'm looking at like a 1.9, a 1.8 in 2001. Naturally, this was the final year of WCW Nitro. Pretty well right across the board, they averaged about 2.2. You had a high of 2.6 to their highest on the final Nitro of a 3. And then their low points throughout the course of everything would be a 1.8, 1.7 was the lowest. So if you're looking back at, how bad WCW ratings were back in the day, they were exponentially better than what Raw has been averaging even last year, and obviously including this year. Now you're down another, 1 million viewers from that. Once again, if you take into account how many people live in a certain household demographic. Once again, most households, there's not just one person watching Raw. There's, a father and a child, or a husband and wife, or whatever, or two husbands, or whatever the fuck, whatever, right? So I'm just saying, like, that's how they base ratings off of it. Obviously, it's not the most scientific way possible to get a ratings number, but it is fairly accurate at the very least. So, and once again, I know that everybody, is going on about the sky's falling And then obviously everybody wants to talk about Impact viewership. Now, the big thing to keep in mind between these two subjects is that, and I know I've been harping on this a bunch of times in a couple other podcasts and throughout talking with a few other people on the subject, WWE Raw and SmackDown, for that matter, are both live broadcasts. So live broadcast lends itself to a higher live viewership audience. Case in point, when you have Impact, which now they've moved to, we'll call it what it is, it's a death time slot, especially for people on the East Coast. Um, and because it's a tape show, now you're essentially killing your live audience. So you're seeing Impact doing, I'm not even sure what it was last week, 122,000 live. I'm not sure if that was an average throughout the show or if that was the high point. It's kind of hard to find those numbers right now. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is when you see a big drop off in a live show, it means a lot more than a big drop off in a tape show, because in theory, you're probably not losing all the people that were watching that show, period. You're probably losing, like, obviously you're losing the people who are watching it live, but those same people are still PVRing or DVRing whatever region you're in, or they're using streaming services like, I don't know, Roku or whatever, to watch the show, or they're catching the highlights on YouTube. And obviously we've seen Impact's social media and especially YouTube numbers increase exponentially this past year, to the point where I believe they were at 1 million subscribers on YouTube at the start of the year, or that would be the start of the, we'll say, takeover period, when Don Callis, Scott D'Amore, and Ed Nordholm kind of made that super group, if you will, to run the company. They were at about 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Now they're just over the 2 million mark, and we are not even a year into that threesome regime really being in power and really affecting change. So what you see them losing on a live viewership, it doesn't mean as much as what you see being lost on a live viewership from a live program like Raw. It would be no different than, I'm not sure if you guys remember, a couple of years ago, everybody was flipping out that Monday Night Football, and it was Thursday Night Football as well, were doing some of their lowest numbers ever. That's because those types of programs, WWE, NFL, the way that their structures are through the network, a lot of that revenue comes from commercials. So obviously when it's live, you can't fast forward your commercials. So that's why there's a lot more revenue generated from commercials sold on time slots to live sports programming events like hockey, like soccer, like football, and like WWE wrestling. Now, Impact obviously is on a much different system, so people PVRing it and watching it later doesn't affect the overall, we'll say, source income from Pop TV that they're on right now, as it would if they were a live prop or live show, and dealing with all the real big losses in viewership. So the point I wanted to make as well is, I know that everybody's saying, if Raw sucks so much, why do people watch it? Well, obviously you're seeing now that people are starting to tune the product out. Obviously this is not a new revelation. I don't watch Raw, but I read every Tuesday every Tuesday and throughout the course of the week, just how much people complain about the direction of the show, characters of the show, the booking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You go down the list. And every week there's, how many hundreds of thousands of people saying, well, why do you watch it? Well, now we're at the point where now these people are not watching it. And this is stemming from even last year, 2 years ago, this is a trend that WWE has had in relation to their booking, in relation to their storylines, in relation to, not listening to fans. I know everybody likes to bandy that around like it doesn't mean anything, but it means a great deal. If you're not giving your fans something that they want to be invested in and invest their time into, well, you're obviously seeing the repercussions now. And losing, 2 million viewers, like that's a big fucking deal. No matter how you try and spin it. And I know that everybody likes to throw out the thing, that they're going to make 700 million this year, and they're the most profitable wrestling company, yada yada yada. I understand that. But what happens when you move to their new network, which they're going to be doing, I believe it's early next year. One's on Fox and one's on another one. Don't quote me, because once again, I'm not really up to my WWE, if you will. What's going to happen when they underperform on those networks? They're probably not going to keep them on prime real estate hours, like they're getting, the treatment through USA Network or whatever their platforms are on right now. They're probably going to get bounced around. So that's obviously going to affect their bottom line. So and I'm not, like, obviously we're being hypothetical here, but you may not see, record profits of $7 million or $700 million next year if their ratings continue to slide, and if on their new network they don't tolerate that and they bounce them around. Now, what does this mean for Impact Wrestling? Well, the way that I look at it, Impact Wrestling is really at a unique crossroads right now, because we all know that they're going to be moving off Pop. Obviously, we don't know. It's been speculated where they're going to go, but we don't know for sure until it happens, what network they're going to wind up on. I have to believe that it's going to be a bigger network with much more exposure on every cable platform, not just on DirecTV, and not a cable platform that's going to be easily canceled, like what happened in, I believe, New York City this year. Whatever cable companies were carrying Pop TV just all of a sudden dropped it for whatever reason. So you're losing a lot of viewers that way. So how can Impact take advantage of the situation? Well, the biggest thing they can do is finally position themselves as a legitimate number 2 company. And what I mean by that is, first off, getting on a bigger network, a more important network, a network that's actually going to promote them and give them the exposure that they need to be successful in the live wrestling business. Because let's face it, they get nothing from Pop TV in terms of promotion, marketing, etc. They get no support from Pop TV at all. It's just they're there. That's the extent of the relationship. I think Gilmore Girls gets more exposure than fucking Impact Wrestling does on Pop TV, but that's the reality. That's the network. That's the deal they signed. That's what they have to live with. On a new network, they have to be able to get all those types of resources. There has to be enough infrastructure in place for them to have their commercials running on other programs, to get their product out there for new people who haven't been exposed to it to be exposed to it. Another thing, and I know everybody's going to say whatever about this, but I really, really feel that if Impact Wrestling is ever going to grow, even if they're on a new network, if they really want to grow their viewership, they have to go live. And I'm not saying every show per se, but you need to have live content. That is the number one way that you're going to increase your live viewership audience. The reality is, if people know something is live, then they know anything can happen. They know it, the spontaneity factor is much more, eminent and impressive than if it's a tape show, because yeah, you watched a 2-hour show, but what did they edit out? How many mistakes were there? Who messed up their promo, right? On a live show, anything is possible. Anything can happen. And that's another factor that likens itself to attract a more of a live viewership audience. If I know that anything can happen on that show, I'm more inclined to tune into that show and watch it live rather than PVR it and watch it later. Now, obviously, a time slot change or a day change, even if for that matter, would help them immensely for it. But the reality is, these are the things that they need to be focusing on, like I said, to capitalize on a drop in viewership from Raw. I have to believe that there's a certain amount of people that just stop watching Raw because they're just sick of wrestling in general. Or maybe they only watch Raw for a certain reason, like, I don't know, their favorite superstar was on there and now they're not. Now that's why they're not watching. But I have to believe that there's a large portion of that audience that wants to watch quality wrestling. So if you're Impact, why in the world would you not give them quality wrestling? And why in the world would you not make it accessible and marketable to them to say, hey, we know you've been watching this one. You've stopped watching them. Give us a change or give us a chance. It's it just I know that everybody talks about how live TV is more costly to produce. That's actually false. It's actually cheaper to produce something live than it is to do all your post production and things like that. Obviously, if you're going to be doing a live program, and then there's things like, where are you setting up? Are you going to be broadcasting from one location like the Dead Zone? I know obviously nobody wants to go back there, but I'm just throwing an example out there. Or is it a situation where, let's say you go to Toronto for one live show, and then the next night you tape for your next week's show, right? There's a couple of things you do here. One, you're not burning your audience out, because we all can see how the audience gets burned from the first show in a set of tapings to how they are at the last one. And that's not a knock on the audience, but it's quite hard to maintain that enthusiasm and everything when you're watching 2 days of tapings and it's 6 hours of wrestling each day for those 2 days. Like, it's like eating your favorite meal. If you ate it every day for a month straight, you'd be sick of it too. It's just, you can only have so much energy for so much time. So that would be the way that I would set them up. So obviously, it remains to be seen if Impact does any of this. I don't think that Raw's ratings are going to be getting better anytime soon. You have to keep in mind now, Christmas Eve's on a Monday, right? Then New Year's Eve's on a Monday. Then they're going to be there's some national championship in the States. I want to say it's college football maybe, or something that runs on a Monday as well coming up. So my point being is they're going to have a lot of competition between their lowest rating now and what I think is going to be a lower rating probably next week and maybe the week after. We'll obviously see how it goes. But once again, if Impact Wrestling is serious about being a big time player in the North American wrestling market, and especially the American wrestling market, now's the time to position yourself as number two. Ring of Honor is not going to do it, right? We all know that Sinclair Broadcasting just simply will not invest enough money to make Ring of Honor anything more than what they are right now. And what they are right now is a niche product in a 300 to 400 seat arena, and that's what you get. Which is a shame because their performers deserve so much more, but that's a Sinclair Broadcasting problem. That's not really a Ring of Honor problem. And I know everybody is really big on MLW right now, but they're kind of in the same boat. They just don't have the infrastructure, resources, talent pool, or anything else right now to position themselves as a legitimate number two. There go. If Impact Wrestling really is committed to making a splash in the wrestling marketplace right now, now's the time to do it. And I think that they could really set themselves up for a lot of success if they do this thing properly. Now, the other thing I wanted to discuss tonight is Impact Wrestling's Homecoming pay-per-view that's coming up on January the 6th, it would be. So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying all kinds of things that they're going to have a tough time going on after Wrestle Kingdom. They're going to have a tough time competing with Wrestle Kingdom. And I don't really agree with that. And I'm going to talk about that right now. So obviously, unless you're under a rock, as I like to say, that Wrestle Kingdom is New Japan Pro Wrestling's big marquee event every year. It's the same day every year. Doesn't matter what day that falls on. This year it happens to be a Friday. It's January 4th every year. That's their big, for lack of a better term, that's their WrestleMania. That's their big yearly event where everybody goes all out. All the talents work as hard as they can. All the storylines culminate that have been going on for the whole year. You have all the titles on the line. it's their marquee event of the entire year. Now, 2 days later, on the Sunday, obviously we are having Homecoming emanating from Nashville, Tennessee. And a lot of people have been saying online that, Impact Wrestling has to try and top Wrestle Kingdom, that they have to come out guns blazing and try and put on a better show, that if they're not able to match Wrestle Kingdom, that it's detrimental to the company, that if they're not able to match the momentum or story or pace or whatever, that it's going to look bad. I don't think that that's the case, and I'm going to explain why. So Wrestle Kingdom, like I said, that's the event. If you're going to any event in New Japan throughout the course of the year, you're going to the Tokyo Dome, you're going to Wrestle Kingdom. That is it. That's the bee's knees. There's no two ways to describe it. That's what it is. You have 13 years essentially of history, of emotional attachment, of people, year after year going to the same event, going to the same storied Tokyo Dome, going to witness this same event once again on the same day, year after year after year. So you have people emotionally invested and emotionally connected and emotionally willing and ready to just pour their hearts and souls out watching this program. Unfortunately, you can't have that with Homecoming. And I'm not saying that people aren't excited for it. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there's no connection to Homecoming. There's no. It's a one-off, right? They've never done this before. Yes, I know that they're going back to the asylum and all the feel-good stories, but the fact is, in terms of a pay-per-view setting, it's just you cannot evoke the same emotional response that Wrestle Kingdom can. First off, right? Second off, once again, Wrestle Kingdom is their big show. Impact Wrestling's big show is Bound for Glory. Although I personally think that Slammiversary for the last 3-4 years has been a lot better than Bound for Glory, but I digress a little bit, because those shows have, once again, that emotional connection, that historical significance within that company. So it's a lot easier for fans to be able to gravitate to those and get emotionally invested and involved in them rather than Homecoming. And once again, I'm not saying that, it's going to be a bad pay-per-view or whatever, because if you just look at the card, it looks incredible. But for anybody saying that, Homecoming is going to be a failure if they don't stack up to Wrestle Kingdom, it's asinine. It doesn't make any sense. You can't. That would be like saying that, oh God, I don't know. The Ring of Honor event that's coming up I believe it's this weekend, that if this one isn't as good as Wrestle Kingdom, which actually precedes it, then that's a failure, and that just doesn't make any sense as well. Some of the same talents are on both shows, but more importantly, I want to see how Homecoming matches up to Wrestle Kingdom, and I don't mean in terms of all the intangibles. What I'm talking about is the wrestling product, if it can match up, the in-ring quality of work. That's what I want to see, if they can match up Homecoming with Wrestle Kingdom. I want them to be able to deliver a great pay-per-view that everybody who spends their $40 on, or whatever the fuck that everybody seems to complain about when it comes to pay-per-view time, can spend that money, watch the pay-per-view, sit after it's all said and done and go, man, that was worth every penny I bought. That's what I want coming out of Homecoming. I want something newsworthy coming out of Homecoming. I want something that's going to have the internet buzzing, regardless of what happens at Wrestle Kingdom. I want something that comes out of Homecoming that has everybody talking for weeks about Impact Wrestling. Once again, drawing interest from people who are maybe disenfranchised by other wrestling products. Once again, here's your alternative. Here's the number 2 promotion, right? That's how you can set yourself up. And I want to see them really continue what they've been doing with story arcs. They've been doing such a great job, Impact Wrestling has been, this whole year of layering all these different stories. Eddie Edwards is a prime example. You've seen, his whole character do a 180 because of an accident. And now he's gone from a feud with Sami Callihan, which is fantastic. Then he to a feud with Tommy Dreamer. Now he's got this gimmick going with Raven. It just his story has been incredible. Ali is another one. I had said at the beginning of the year, or even in the summer, that to me she's just kind of there. The fans don't seem to be behind her or whatever. She's just a player. She's not a big time player, and nobody seems to really care one way or another about her. Now, fast forward, 2, 3, 4 months since, with the advent of Sue Young and her whole character, right now you're adding this layer of the Dark Alley character. Now people are all of a sudden like, holy shit, it's great television and it's a great story. And just like the way that Impact has been continually layering story after story after story. Sami Callihan's another one, right? He goes from the Eddie Edwards feud right to the Pentagon Junior feud. Then it's involving the Lucha Brothers. Then he's in there with Brian Cage. Now he's, he just, this guy just keeps reinventing himself and reinventing storylines, getting himself over. And he's a goddamn heel, but he's so over because people can't wait to see what he's going to be doing next. It's incredible. Obviously, with the Eli Drake stuff as well, we'll see what they do with him moving forward. But I have to imagine that there's going to be something coming out of his match with Abyss. Obviously, it's going to be a Monsters Ball match at Homecoming, so we'll see where everything goes from there. But those are just kind of my thoughts, obviously, on the WWE Raw rating situation. And I also want to point out, too, I know everybody keeps talking about how shitty Raw is doing and all that. And then everybody keeps putting over how good the SmackDown show is. Well, the SmackDown ratings aren't any better than the Raw ratings. So I have a feeling that whatever viewership you're losing on Raw, they're really not tuning into SmackDown. I very rarely see as well, while I'm on that point, people on Twitter who only watch one show, right? Or only watch NXT, for example. There's a few, but not very many. Most people will watch Raw, will watch SmackDown, will watch NXT. So the people who are not watching Raw are also now not watching SmackDown, who are also now not watching NXT. You see where I'm going. That's why I'm saying if you're going to lure fans in with a smoking pay-per-view like Homecoming should be, and then setting yourselves up company-wise to position yourselves as the number 2, must-watch company in North America, the tools are there. Obviously, Impact needs to be willing to invest. You got to spend money to make money, right? And I had a conversation with Robert from Robert Does Wrestling actually on my program. This would have been back in the summer about, even things like their entrance music now is a lot of free play things. Just management seems to be in a we'll say holding pattern when it comes to spending money. Well, once again, with Raw's viewership declining, you need to be able to set yourselves up to offer these fans something to watch, offer wrestling fans an actual alternative, something to actually watch, something that they can sink their teeth into, and something that they can enjoy. I'm not suggesting for a second that Impact Wrestling has not been enjoyable in the last, goddamn 10 months or whatever. But what I am saying is they're on such a small market channel, they're on such a small, viewing household percentage that once again, they need to be able to move on to another network. Once they do that, then I really think that they have to start investing money, start spending money. Money spending is good on themselves, on their product, to get themselves out there, to lure back maybe fans that used to watch TNA Impact, lure them back, lure fans that have tuned out WWE programming, lure them into your program, offer them a strong, viable option, not just a Mickey Mouse organization with, and I'm not knocking it, but, doing a big pay-per-view like Bound for Glory in New York for 1,000 people is just, it's not good enough. It's simply not, especially after they came out of Slammiversary, where they were at the Rebel Complex and did 3 or 4 times that. So just it's time for Impact's management, Anthem, to start spending money if they want to attract or be able to attract these disenfranchised fans from WWE program. That's the be all end all of it all. So what do we got in the comments section? Jimmy, my boy Jimmy, Jamal Francis. Why do we pay so much attention to ratings? This is so weird. I wish we paid more attention to characters and storylines. And I agree. But what characters and storylines are on WWE programming right now that have you invested? And I don't mean just you, Jimmy, anybody watching right now. What are the programs that have you invested in them? Because, and once again, I'm kind of a layman because I don't really watch the programming, so I can't say for sure what the issue is. But to me, when I'm reading Twitter the next day or the next week even, and it's, rinse, wash, repeat. They have their authority figure come out, start the show with a promo, then they have a match that may or may not lead to any type of story or character development. Then they have, maybe a women's match that once again just goes nowhere with the women, while you have a lot of these big players that the fans want to see sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything. And then your main event is hit or miss. And then maybe Lesnar shows up. To me, that's like, if that's not every Raw that I've read about in the last, I want to say year almost, if that's not exactly how that's laid out, then obviously let me know in the comments section. But from what I read and from what I understand, that seems to be the way that the way that everything seems to be positioned, and just that's why it's so much easier to talk about the ratings, right? You can talk very easily because it's quantifiable how many viewers they're losing week after week, month after month, because the programming is not keeping anybody interested in what they're doing. And I know Jimmy Jacobs and some other people had come out on Twitter this past week saying, how writing wrestling show 52 weeks of the year is hard, and then factor in the pay-per-views and all things like that. I get it. It's not an easy job. And I'm not saying that, there aren't some talented individuals on their writing staff. But you cannot tell me that a company that's supposedly going to gross $700 million in profit can't get either more writers or a better team of writers or a better whatever to write coherent storylines that people want to see and want to get invested in. You can't tell me that it's not possible. Maybe they need to bring people in who understand wrestling. It's all well and good to hire Hollywood writers. We know that that's, kind of the be all or what they do right now. Like, isn't Freddie Prinze Jr. a writer? He was the last time I heard. Once again, it shows you how long I've been out of the loop with the programming. But you cannot tell me that this company can't afford to hire better writers. If the writers are the problem, that this company can't hire better writers. And I know that everybody wants to throw out the buck stops with Vince McMahon and things like that. But, like, goddamn, the buck stopped with Vince McMahon in the early 2000s. I'm not going to discuss the Russo era. I'm going to talk about even when I used to watch Raw, from 90, we'll say 6 to 2004, right? McMahon was still there, but to me, there were less people writing, but there were people writing who were knowledgeable about wrestling, and maybe that's the big difference, right? I know everybody likes to pile on guys like Bruce Pritchard and whatever, but they understand the wrestling business, or Dusty or Paul Heyman or whoever, right? They understand the wrestling business, so why would they not be writing your television? Why would you bring people in who have never watched the programming, have no idea who these characters are supposed to be, and give them a sheet of paper and say, here, write a story for them? Then everybody wonders why, week after week, these storylines don't make any sense. Well, because you have people who are writing this that don't know how it's supposed to be written. And the other part of this is they just seem to, I don't know, not talk to the talent ever about what direction they should go. There's no fucking way that you can tell me that the writing staff has gone up to Seth Rollins, for example, and said, "What do you want to do this week?" And just listen to him tell the direction of his character and what he thinks he should be doing this week. Not a chance. And I know this week he did the pipe bomb, which is such a fucking overused and bullshit statement in itself, but everybody's talking about that promo that he cut on Raw this week, how Seth Rollins is the internet fans and Baron Corbin is Vince McMahon, but like all that is it's trolling, because what did it do? It didn't bump a rating. People talked about it for a day and don't give a fuck anymore. It didn't do anything to further Seth Rollins' character or storyline or anything that he has going on. I don't even know what character he's supposed to be. Somebody tell me, what is Seth Rollins' character, right? What is Sasha Banks' character? Who is Sasha Banks, right? I can at least know who Charlotte is, for example, but who are these other people that they keep putting on television each and every week? A lot of people don't know. And the fact is that you don't know because they're not written well, because the people writing, like I said, just they don't write wrestling. They write Hollywood soap operas, but not wrestling. So I don't know. I know I've kind of got a long-winded answer on your question, Jimmy, but I think that's why people pay so much attention to ratings, is because it's so easy to correlate the decrease in ratings with the decrease in people's caring about storylines, the decrease in people's attention that they're paying to specific characters or specific segments on a show. Everything to me is systemic, and it all is interwoven, and it all starts with a properly written show by, you know, people who understand the wrestling business. That's all there is to it. I think I'm done all my ranting. So I know that we are about 25 minutes from Impact Wrestling, so I will let everybody go grab a drink, grab a snack, do what you got to do before Impact Wrestling. I will say, make sure you hit wrestlingwithwrestling.com. There's been a bunch of great insight and articles on there. Andre just posted a great piece as well. He had Danny Duggan on, who runs CWE. A lot of you'll remember. Last week I ran the program talking about Danny Duggan's dealings with Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake, who, by the way, fucking blocked and reported me on Twitter. Thanks for that one, bud. But go back and watch that video if you haven't seen it. You can read his or hear his entire statement and testimony of what happened when Brutus was on that tour and what happened with that whole situation. It's really a fascinating read and fascinating understanding about how the wrestling business works in rural Canada, because I feel like a lot of people just don't understand that, and especially on the prairies, because it's not easy out here. And I really think that did a great job of putting it over. So thanks, Andre, for getting Danny on there as well on your program. Once again, I want to shout out my new podcast network sponsors, the Pulse Podcast Network. You can find them pulsepodcastnetwork.com. And once again, for the brand new show sponsor, as it were, let me pull this up here because I don't know it off by heart, and I was only given this information the other day. So it's Extreme Jerseys. I'm going to put the link on my not YouTube page, because you're obviously watching the YouTube page right now, but putting it on the Twitter page, and use the promo code PULSE for 10% off your order. And once again, if you are watching this on youtube.com/c/6sided-podcast, please make sure you hit that nice red shiny subscribe button. And if you're listening to this on any other platform, which this will be on later tonight, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Deezer, wherever you buy, sell, barter, trade, whatever your favorite podcast programs, you will find us. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and give us a rating if possible. So for myself, the Taxman, for the Pulse Podcast Network, for Andre Corbeil, and everybody at wrestlingwithwrestling.com, as I say every week, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, everyone.